All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, here we go again. You already know what goes down when you hit the play button on this show. Whatever you may be going through, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties, whatever obstacles you may be facing, we're here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. There's always someone out there that's really here to help you and push you in a way in which it's going to be positive and conducive to your development. I have two people on that are going to redefine a term that I like to use. It's called edutainment, where we're taking in education and we're taking entertainment and we're merging into one. It's Justin Guarini. You may have heard the name, yes, that guy that was on American Idol, going to get that dude. But so much of his story is further beyond that. He did that when he was really young. And as I listened to him and as I was getting prepared for the show, Justin, there's so much of yourself that you've been able to give up and learn about yourself after that show. And I can't wait to dive into it. So he has a business partner. Her name is Walsh Phillips, who too has a very great background, a very high list of A-name clients that she's worked with before. But I'm going to do my best not to bring up the big names that they work with because they're doing some work for you. They don't walk around like they're celebrities. They don't walk around like they're better than anybody.
But we like a good name drop. Come on now.
Come on.
All right, we will do a name drop. Mr. Wonderful, Shark Tank, those kinds of folks, Oprah, you may have heard those names. Now, the name drop, again, I'm going to be careful here because name drops are
Can I just say one thing about that? I know this is your intro, but want to say something. There's actually a scientific reason why those names are important. It's called the tribe effect. Robert Cialdini in his book Influence talks about when you align yourself with someone people already know, like, and trust, it actually builds their trust with you. So it doesn't make us higher than or too good then. It just builds trust because they've heard of those people before.
Hey, listen, I promise you guys are going to get edutained today, and we've already started early. So before we get too into your story, I'd love for you guys to share a little bit about your background and kind of how you grew up a little bit. Justin, I know you had kind of mentioned you had that bug very early on, and you as well were very early in the entertainment space. So before we get too into what you do now, talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of kick things off from there. So
I would actually love to introduce Justin to you, and he could introduce me.
Let's do it. Oh, that's a good idea. I like that.
That's an edutainment too. When someone else shares your story, it actually has more credibility and believability because when a third party shares your story, it has 84% believability rating. And when you share your own, only is at 14%. So whenever you can have someone else share your story for you, you should do that. Yep. So Justin,
you're getting today, guys. Come on, man. You could go into church early.
We're just getting warm.
Go ahead.
So Justin was on season 1 of American Idol. He was in front of 30 million fans voting for him week after week. He then went on to 7 different Broadway shows, many of which he was selected. He didn't have to audition for because people know of him and his incredible talent, including his most recent role that was basically created for him on Broadway. He is also the character behind Lil Sweet for Dr. Pepper, which he had the privilege of playing for over 7 years. And he's currently the voice on Disney, one of Disney's most popular cartoons on Disney Junior. Right now, from that, he's actually taken all of his talents to become a performance coach, starting first with actors and performers. And then when I had the absolute privilege of getting to meet him on the Odd App Clubhouse, we connected. I hired him to be an MC for one of our virtual events. He came in person. Most MCs are in the background, like goofing off, doing other things, but he's working on his business. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm a coach. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I want to grow my coaching business and I can help you with that. So I became his coach. He started growing his business. I then started bringing him in to be a coach of some of my clients, and I'm going to turn the story over to Justin to finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. I met Kim on Clubhouse, like she said, and when I did my homework, because I like to do my homework for the people that I work for and work with, especially in the MC space, I like to know what it is that I'm signing myself up for. I found that Kim, I mean, was and still is this fiery Italian from Long Island who is a four-time best-selling author. But really, you go back to just started out in marketing and in a little town in York, Pennsylvania. Started working there for the actual city itself, doing events, got into the politics space, but ultimately had her own marketing agency. And ended up landing on the Inc. 5,000 list at like 479, I think it is,
Mhm.
and went from there to selling that marketing agency and going from I think it's like a was it 34 clients or a couple hundred clients?
32
Yeah,
clients to 11,000.
32 clients, going from 32 clients in her marketing agency and then expanding from there into her own business where she really scaled up from 32 clients to over 11,000 clients in her
Mhm.
business, again landing her on that Inc. 5,000 list. And then from there she went on to not only work with, but author a book, his best-selling book with Dan Kennedy called the No BS Guide to Social Media Marketing, which is fantastic. I mean, like Dan
Yeah,
Kennedy is
that's
one of
big.
those
Dan
old,
Kennedy, yeah, that's a that if you were talking about name drop,
right?
it's a big one in
Right.
it.
One of the biggest name
Yeah.
drops you can make. And then Dan Kennedy said, "Look, I'm never going to work with a woman with a hyphenated last name, and I'm certainly never ever going to write a book about social media. But because of what Kim has been able to do, he's like, I have to work with you. I'm going to write a book with you, and it's
Mhm.
one of his best selling, if not his best selling book to date." So,
Mhm.
as if that wasn't enough, when you think of people like Kevin, Mr. Wonderful O'Leary on
Mhm.
Shark Tank and how he makes investments, the first time that he heard about what Kim does and has done, he invited her to do all the marketing and all the social media marketing for a lot of the companies that he invests in on Shark Tank. And so many of those wonderful things, so many of those wonderful clients. But ultimately, what Kim prides herself on, and now I, along with her in our business, pride ourselves on, is like taking the people you haven't heard of who have
Yeah.
also put in the blood, sweat, and the tears, who have successful businesses, but kind of feel stuck, kind of feel like they're the best kept secret, kind of feel like they just are in the rat race of that one-to-one and getting on virtual meetings. And I just wish I could just get my message out to more people. And so when I was emceeing the event that Kim was talking about, I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. That what she's talking about, what she
Oh, Justin, you muted all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. All right, I'll finish the story from
I
there. We
wonder why
ended
he's
up
muted though. I didn't mute him.
can you hear
it's
me? Are
cool.
you sure?
Now you
Okay.
can
Can you
hear
hear
him.
me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, apologies. Yeah.
I
So,
mean, you were on fire, so that might have been it.
No,
oh
keep
yeah, I was.
going. Keep going.
I'm going. I'm going. You know,
I
I
feel
got.
like you're saying great things about me. I thought
I
in a certain
was like,
way you were going to be
don't
like,
stop
she
saying
made
great
one of the
things.
best decisions of her life, hiring me as an MC, but you didn't say that, so you keep going.
Yeah.
Well, it's really true. It's really true. But that being said, she was delivering this amazing message to the 300 or 400 people who were live with her in this virtual space, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I this is right for me." So, like she said, we started working together. I started then coming in and coaching her clients, and it the catalyst really for us was when we were invited. When Kim was invited onto a show on Bravo called Below Deck Sailing.
Mhm.
And she invited me and some other team members along with her. And we just started coaching the people on the show, like the
Mhm.
cast. And we were just saying, hey, we get marketing message, performance message. And a producer came up to us and said, hey, do you guys do this for a living? And we're like, no, separately, we kind of do
All
these
right.
things. And the producer's like, I think you're on to something.
Yeah.
And so then we found ourselves in the customs line coming back into America after flying, from Italy and into Barcelona and just flying all around the world. We're like, huh, what if we did this? And so that's where I'll turn it back over to Kim. And that's what we're really talking about today, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
ultimately the Elite Speakers Network,
Mhm.
which is what we're doing for entrepreneurs and people who want to, successful business owners who want to expand their business by getting out of the rat race of one-to-one
Mhm.
and leverage the power of one-to-many
Right.
by getting up and speaking in front of audiences.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things, and I'm glad you actually brought up the speakers network that you guys, your coaching business, because one of the things that I'm sure you hear, I hear it constantly, is that public speaking is a no-no for a lot of people. Public speaking, when it comes to that, they'd rather die than public speak. And when it comes to specifically, one of the things that you guys actually, I heard you say previously to get over that is you're never going to not be nervous going into a speech. You're never going to not be nervous going into a show. You're never going to not be nervous going into a pitch, a sales, anything like that. And when you break it down like that, you kind of talked about how those nerves are actually a good thing because you give a shit. You actually give a shit about what you're presenting and you really, really believe in your heart and you want to do well. Can you speak on a little bit about when you guys first started and kind of got that point where you were nervous, maybe in your first pitch, and maybe the first person that you had tried to sell a program to, for you, it might have been the first time you were on stage. How did you guys get over that moment for our listeners who are understanding and they know, hey, as a business owner, look, I could try to sell all day, but if I don't develop this voice, if I don't get on the phone and call people and reach out and make sure I'm making a communication, I'm losing money by the minutes. So, speak to that a little bit.
Yes, I didn't get over it. I'm gonna be clear. I I am nervous and nauseous whenever I speak. And so I think that people are saying like I could never. You're choosing not to. Don't say I could never, because that actually takes the responsibility out of your hands. You are making a choice to not reach more people with something that could change their life. And I want that to hit smack you in the face. You were choosing either to serve people or you were choosing to serve yourself. That's what you're doing in that moment.
Right.
Because when we make it all about us, that's when we make our fear more important than our regret.
Mhm.
Because if we truly are living and with the specific purpose of I'm going to make as much impact, as much money, as much change, as much of a difference, as much of a legacy as I can, every single day. And those are the only people that Justin and I work with. So I am happy to call that out.
1,000.
Then you choose to sit in fear because your comfort is more important than your greatness. Then yeah, you're never going to get on the stage because guess what? It's always going to be nerve-wracking. It's always going to come with uncertainty. It's always going to come with a chance of it not working well. It's always going to come with technical difficulties. There's been so many times where our clicker doesn't work, our sound doesn't work, the screens don't work. And
Yeah.
we've been in huge venues, and that's the chance. And if a thought like that, if something went wrong, I wouldn't be able to handle it, then you're not ready for the stage yet. But instead, you're like, well, you know what? This is something that I know is important because if I just talk to people one-on-one every day for the rest of my life, I can't possibly reach the people I'm created to serve. Then we have good news for you. It is a learnable process and skill. In spite of being nervous, in spite of being scared, in spite of being nauseous, you can still confidently take the stage and a comfortability and show up as yourself. You can still walk up the stage and have people follow you, thanking you for having given that talk. You can still multiply the revenue of your business. In an hour, you could generate more money than you did all last year. In an hour. That is what the driver is. So say you're nervous, say good, that means I'm human.
Right.
But say that I'm not willing to move forward because of that, that's where the problem lies.
But before you go, Justin, I gotta ask this because I'm moved by your response. I really am. I really am moved, and I love the fact that you explain to people, look, that is the choice you're making in that moment. I think it's Grant Cardone who famously said, "Poor people and middle class, you're actually selfish because you're saying, oh, I don't need as much money as I actually need, and you're only thinking about yourself." So in that moment, you're 1,000% right. You're selfish by making your personal feeling more
Your
important.
comfort, more important
Yeah.
than your greatness.
But,
Yeah.
but the question I have for you, and also Justin, I'd love for you to share on this as well, is where do you develop that confidence in yourself? How did you guys develop the confidence in yourself to say, look, I'm worth millions of dollars because of my message? Where is it that it's come from? Because I know it doesn't just, you don't just wake up one morning and say, okay, look, my name's Justin, my name's Kim. You guys pay me millions of dollars because I have a cool story. No, there was some real shit that had to happen to you before that you believe in your heart you can change thousands of people's thousands of people's lives within an hour and giving your story as hard as you can. Where does that come from?
There is a step of comfortable confidence. Comfortable confidence. And then, yeah, I'll pass over to Justin. There's a step of comfortable confidence in the place of giving your brain comfort. So here's the thing. We want to feel safety all the time. And that's super, super normal. Our DNA was actually given, like that was given to us. So we stayed safe. So we didn't walk off the cliff or get eaten by the bear. That is a normal desire. But
Right.
because your brain is always seeking comfortability, when you enter new strategies, new territories, your goal should be, before you jump into it, give your brain a reason why this isn't new or uncertain. So what you need to do is find evidence how what you're about to do, you are equipped to do based on things you've already done. So you make a list of the things that you've already done that prepared you for this next step you're going to take. So like you stop thinking, you know that phrase, like, you're going to prove this to myself that I could do it. Proving to yourself that you could do it while you're doing it is a way to just make yourself super anxious and really have a high chance of giving up. Because now you're telling your brain the whole time, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can. Instead, give your brain the ability to fall into habit brain where it's super comfortable by reminding it of ways that this is similar to something that you've already done. Every time you can give your brain more evidence of that, you create this comfortability that makes it likely to move forward. Over to you, Guarini.
Go ahead.
Hey, now that's a beautiful, yeah. And I would just add to that what we like to call yes-anding. And so when it comes to like, okay, what's my value? What's my worth? Why? Well, I don't know. How can I wake up one morning and just understand like, hey, I am worthy to be fill in the blank, whatever that impossible game, impossible dream is for you. And I think, I mentioned the word value, and it comes to really truly down to understanding what value is. Value for me, when I think about value, which is the reason why I tend to, I don't know, I'll like buy some really cool shoes I like, or whether I'll invest in a program that, I can use and leverage for my sales and marketing. Like value to me, and we love to say this in a lot of the master classes we do, it's like you have value and you deserve to be paid for it. That was what Kim taught me. You have value and you deserve to be paid for it. But wait, what's value? Value, in the simplest sense to me, is the solution to a problem. Value is the solution to a problem. Now, the larger the problem you can solve, the more value you have. I'll give you a simple example that's kind of like, I don't know, it feels like a little bit of a flex for me, but I'll use it. Is
my man, flex.
I love a beautiful black and white pair of Jordans that I got. They got the shiny black. It's got like the shiny black with a little bit of like the sort of what do you call it? Oh man, I forget what it's called, but it's like great, cool material. They're really kind of hard to find, and I'm willing to pay the price for J's because they solve a problem for me. They have a value for me. When I walk up on the stage in this particular pair of J's, my status rises just by people seeing me with those shoes on. They are more likely to know, like, trust me, think that I'm style, whatever they want to think, right? It elevates my status. It solves my problem of status that I want to have. Just like for everybody else, because when somebody's wearing a killer pair of J's, you notice if you're someone who's into that. And so there are people that I want to impress and elevate my status around, and that's what it is. So that's why the value of Jordans are so important to me. Now, what does that mean in terms of, am I worthy to be a millionaire? Well, it just comes down to understanding what is the problem that you solve. Do you solve a $2 problem? Do you solve a $10,000 problem? Do you solve a $100,000 problem? Do you solve $1 million problem? If you can figure out the answer to that, if you can figure out the problem that you solve, because at the end of the day, when we couple value with sales, it's very simple.
Right.
Sales is just so clearly articulating and uncovering the value that you have. You so clearly uncover that value that the value of what you have is worth more than the money in someone else's pocket. They feel grateful when they give you their money because ultimately the value, the problem that you solve is so powerful that it is worth 10 times what they're giving you. So it's a very simple and maybe even oversimplified version of like, well, just figure out what your value is because everyone has value and everyone deserves to be paid for it.
Right. So when you talk about like the levels of values, whether they're $20, 20,000, $20 million value problems that you're solving, what do you tell a person that may be selling themselves too short, all right, or trying to do things too locally? And I'll actually give you an example of my own life as a speaker. One of the things that I would do, I used to be a trainer for a company named Positive Coaching Alliance. I still technically can do stuff with them, but I would do regular workshops for coaches and athletes and stuff like that. And there was this big school out here in Fort Lauderdale. You might have heard of it, St. Thomas Aquinas. All right. And I did a workshop for 70 coaches. And this at the time was a big deal for me. I'm actually, in the sports world, and this is a big major school. But I told them a story about something that happened to me in high school, which I was draped up steps. And I would tell this story all the time in workshops. I was draped up steps by two white teachers in high school. My face slammed against the wall. I was like really there. It was hurt. It was a hurtful story. And it took me time to be able to admit that in a public setting. So after that, I got a text from the organizer and basically saying, we're not going to invite you back because that story made a couple of the people in the audience very uncomfortable. And I realized at that point, wait a minute, I'm selling myself too short. That story probably belongs to a different audience or a different group. And, that's something that I shouldn't feel like I should. Obviously, I'm not going to stop speaking on it because of that one thing, but I realize, hey, maybe that message may not have connected with them. So when it comes to speaking, to finding your right audience and finding those bigger problems, how do you coach people to be that vulnerable, that courageous on stage when they're sharing their heart, they're sharing things that really happened to them, and it can be received by an audience that says, hey, fuck, that made me uncomfortable. How do you guys coach people through that?
First of all, I'm very sorry that you went through that situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That happened to you. So, my condolences for that. And I'm sorry you also went through the experience of someone invalidating your storytelling by sending a message such as that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we sometimes make people feel uncomfortable with our truth. And for whatever reason that made that person feel uncomfortable, it was probably the exact right moment that you did need to share that story.
Mm-hmm.
That audience needed to hear it. But there is a lot of power in finding the right story for the right audience at the right time.
Right.
So we recommend that you create an inventory of stories, your big life-changing moments, the big ahas, the big takeaway, and then you match the right story with the right market, with the right message. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that you'll find in audiences is you're either are going to have a get out of pain story. So that was a get out of pain story that you're talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the audience needs a get out of comfort story instead of out of pain. So I used to tell a get out of pain story. I used to tell the time I hucked my engagement ring in order to make payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a story of like survival with my finances.
Mm-hmm.
Our right fit client though already owns a business and he is wanting to grow it and wanting to really build his legacy and his greatness. And
Mm-hmm.
so I changed the story that I tell, even though it's a really good story. And you mentioned Grant Cardone actually won a storytelling competition out of 10,000 people with that story. So it's a
Right.
really good
Oh,
story.
that you won the competition?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no shit. There you go. Congrats.
But it's not the right story for my market. So
Wow.
even though it's a great story and I'm really good at telling it, I stopped telling it because when I story tell, it's not about fascinating me, it's about fascinating my audience. And
Oh,
my audience needs a story about not moving out of pain, but moving out of comfort.
yeah.
So now I tell a story about a time I put my daughters to bed and I felt I called up to God and said, can you freeze time for a minute? I don't want to miss them growing up. And I heard God whisper back to say, I don't need to freeze time, Kim. You need to be more present. And then I
Uh-huh.
talked about a story of me selling my business and going from 32 clients to 11,000 because
Mm-hmm.
that's the right story for that audience. And
Yeah.
if you know Russell Brunson, he has the story he tells about his potato gun business.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's
I've
the
heard
story
that
he
one.
tells
The
to like the
ClickFunnels
dreamer
guy told me
audience.
listeners.
Right.
Everyone has.
But when he's speaking to a group of VCs, he doesn't tell that story. He tells a
Huh.
story about how we grew an $8 million business. We
Right.
always the story isn't necessarily wrong. It might be the wrong story for that audience because you want to make sure your story matches the audience you're talking to, so it makes them feel like you're reading their mind.
Mm-hmm. And that actually brings me to another thing that I want to make sure we touch on as well, because again, I know a lot of you guys are listening in, are business owners, and you're wanting to know how to move forward with your business. And when we're talking to pretty much the two people that are absolutely elite when it comes to creating ROI, return on investment, and making sure you're getting repeat customers, reoccurring buyers, going from customers to clients, all that stuff. And your storytelling, guys, is so fucking important. I have no other way. You have got to tell great stories to get people. I mean, it's often said that stories are the things that actually sell. Nothing is going to sell as great as a great story. So can you dive into a little bit about how storytelling and ROI are very parallel towards a business? And even if you don't want to necessarily be a professional speaker, just being able to speak to people in a certain way, that's going to create those returns and those reoccurring income.
Yeah, we just live in, and this is why, it's so great that you said, edutainment at the beginning of this, because we live in a society that is where the people who are marketing to us, who are trying to get our attention, have to come up with new ways, because back in the day it just used to be the big three, which is television, radio, and newspaper, maybe magazines, right? That was they were the gatekeepers to advertising on a large scale anyway, right? But now we have this thing in our hands that gives us a window into the world. Yeah, exactly. The phone. I mean, it's just like the phone, the computer, the watches that do it now. I mean, it's a gift and a curse, because we are in control of our own stories. We are in control of our own brands. However, there are a billion other people out there who have the same exact power. So how do you differentiate yourself? Because look, there are millions of people who have the same business as you, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, right? Who offer similar services that you or you, dear listener, provide. What is that difference? The difference is that story. That story, that thing that makes people relate to you, that thing that makes them see themselves in your journey, themselves in what you've overcome, themselves in the product, and have an affinity with that product. And something that Les Brown told me one time, an amazing speaker, Hall of Fame speaker, Les Brown.
And he's not, I hate to pause you here, but we got another big name that we just dropped here. Again, like she said, a good name drop. But Les Brown, especially being out here in South Florida, that's a big deal out here in Miami. Shout out to Les Brown.
We should have had them play a drinking game. Like every time we drop a name, you have another.
No, there's no reason to die of blood alcohol poisoning. Les Brown said one time, I was watching him speak, and he said, never tell a story without a point, and never make a point without telling a story. Wow. Because that's how powerful storytelling is. Look at the campaigning that's going on in politics. Look at commercials. Look at every single facet of the media in our life, and it is dominated by stories, dominated by edutainment, where we're being entertained because the most memorable commercials. I mean, I was part of one of those for 7 years. Lil Sweet is a little rock star who pops out of strange places and for no apparent reason gives people Diet Dr. Peppers just because they've been X, Y, or Z, depending on what the commercial. I pop out of all, but why do you remember those commercials? Why did a soda commercial last for 7 years? Because people were entertained. They loved it. They talked about it with their friends. They were like, oh my goodness, I've never seen something like this. Who is that? What are they doing? How are they doing it? And that is the same thing with your business, your product, your service. Your story is what differentiates you from everyone else. Your story and how you tell it is what is going to make your right fit client, not just any client, your right fit client, not only endear themselves, you endear yourself to them, but ultimately they see and they want to be a part of your community, not just a part of the commodity that you sell.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that leads me into the next thing I want to make sure we are on the record and talking about, is because you had already kind of mentioned it, Kim, is your ideal client. You made the statement very clearly. You don't just work with anybody. And I'm so glad you said that, because I want to give you the opportunity to speak a little bit about what journey do you take these people on? Like, is it a situation where people are very shy? I mean, I could imagine you can get all sorts of people that come to you and they say, look, I'm not that great of a speaker, but I could, like, how are you able to kind of take people on this journey in which, they're like, man, I met Justin, I met Kim, and my life, I don't know where my life would be had I not been able to meet these two, and they helped me, coach me through a lot of these things.
People who come to us, it's interesting. We have found this nuance about our audience. They're business owners who have been in the performing arts before. And it's so cool at the school you're teaching at
You
now.
would be perfect for the School
Yeah.
Center for Creative Education. Yeah, we invite teaching artists to come to teach the kids. So we
Well,
merge it
I
with
do like some West Palm Beach, so we'll have to talk off air.
Oh my goodness, it's crazy out here. Like, I'm still consider myself new out here, but man, it's a different beast. It is. It is. But go ahead.
So they were in band, theater,
Mhm.
debate club, cheerleading. They performed in some way, and now they want to use the gift of performance to get on stage. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not nervous. We have a amazing client who, she was in the Russian ballet when she was a little girl, and she forgot some of her moves. And when she got off the stage, she was told that she shamed the family, and so she shamed the royal family of Russia. So she had a lot of fear because it brought up PTSD from a childhood traumatic moment, rightfully so. But we were able to work through that with her. So now she not only takes the stage, she actually wins regularly Toastmasters competitions as a speaker. So if you had something that happened that made you think, well, I can't, you can, you just need to know how. And the fact that you haven't yet, that's okay. But the journey looks like this. Somebody comes to us who has an awesome business. They do great work, but they're tired of relying upon word of mouth and referrals. They're tired of putting their business in the hands of others. They want to grow their business and they want to get on stages to do it. They may have spoken on a few stages, but they're not as big as they want. They may have gotten paid a little bit to speak on stage, but they want to get paid more. And they may be speaking on stage, but it doesn't drive business in the door. And so what they come to us for is they want to get an automated funnel to get them on the stage, which we set up. They want to get the right talk title that gets them booked with high, big audiences that pay them a lot of money. And they want to make money before they get on the stage with keynote, while they're on the stage with a really good offer, and once they get off the stage, by turning the clients that enroll with them into higher ticket clients. And that's the work that we do. So I'll give you one brief example. I have an amazing client that Justin and I work with, Dr. Bashima Williams. She is a functional medicine doctor, and she worked with one-on-one patients, and her book is completely filled. You cannot get in with her as a physician, but she wanted to serve more people. So we developed a course for her called the Feel Good Gut Health Program, developed a talk for her that talks about what you can do to actually heal your stomach, and launched a course. And she just did her virtual talk last week. She closed 32% of the audience into her brand new program. And now she could serve all these people at one time. And then we have Brian Clackeston. His target market is roofers, like home contractors. And he created a talk that's incredible for them. He used it to launch his brand new mastermind. And he generated $1.25 million in revenue in 30 days.
With an M, folks, with an M.
So you can. The amazing thing about the speaking business that's different than any other business in the world, that you don't have to pay for leads. You get paid to generate leads. You don't have to create an audience. You can step on a stage from somebody who already created an audience for you. You don't have to build your authority. When you step on the stage, you become an instant authority. And what's so amazing about our industry that's different than any other industry, I can impact an entire room of people. I can change all of their lives. And even if only 50% of them end up becoming my client, which is a really great conversion number, I still got to impact 100% of the room. There is no other industry in the world that works like that. And that's why I'm proud to be a speaker.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, if you knew me, high school me, little kid me, very shy, reserved kid, you would not be thinking that this guy's going to be a public speaker and have this podcast and do the work I'm doing. But a lot like you when you saw the Jackson 5, man. When I gave my first speech, so you mentioned Toastmasters, but when I gave my first speech and I got that reaction when people really felt their story, I mean, some people came up to me and just shook my hand and said, "Can't believe you did this." That feeling, it beats absolutely anything. And to know that you could be doing that for a living and touching people's lives, it's no better feeling. So I second that. I pray that you continue to get out of your comfort zone. It's so important.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. So you had that moment, you went and told the talk. My guess is for you, you had a message that was on your heart and in your
Yeah.
head that you couldn't let go of. So describe that for the listeners right now. What was that feeling like and what were you seeing? Because I know there's somebody, like, I just feel in my bones right now. There's somebody who's listening to this who needs you to tell your version of why you wanted to take the stage because they want to resonate with that right now. So do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, 1000%. So first of all, it starts with my name, Aswan Crookshank, right? So I was the definition of a social misfit in school. And luckily, I found this great sport of football growing up in Silver Spring, Maryland, where it's an area that's normally known for basketball. But football was the thing I found in which I felt my acceptance. It didn't really matter where I was from, how funny my name was. The only thing that mattered is how hard I was going to work. So we had a situation. I was 9 years old. Man, this was third or fourth grade. I can't remember. I remember I was 9 years old though. But I had my first ever white coach, right? White coach, Coach Art, right? 9 years old. And the year before we went 2-6. We were absolutely terrible. We sucked. So Coach Art comes in. It's the first white coach, and he brings this official feel to the program. And we go 6-2 and make it to the playoffs, completely flip around our season. So we get to the playoff game and we're winning. The team that beat us in the regular season, we're winning the game. We're like, all right, bet, he told us we could do it. We're actually about to go to the championship. So we get to the fourth quarter, and I was a captain on this team. We get to the fourth quarter, we're about to win. Coach Art comes out, is giving us a congrats, like, come on, guys, let's do it. Let's win this, let's do it, right? The next thing I know, Kim and listeners, Kim, Justin, and all you listeners out there, next thing I know, Coach Art is not face down, head up, having a massive heart attack on the field, struggling for breath. I mean, images planted right here in my skull of a man dying on the field. That was the last day. He died that day, gone, 9 years old. So from that point, when people say it's just a game, this was the thing that got my acceptance. This was the thing in which I learned leadership. This was the thing that, even though I was a shy, reserved kid, I had to jump out and tell my story because his daughters used to be the one doing the film. His wife was at the game. His whole family was involved. Jason, Raina, all of them, I remember it. To this day, I don't have the luxury of staying quiet because there are people who remember Aswan as just a football player and said, hey, you got to go do it. He's right here in this Zoom room. He's right there on the pod. He's right there every single morning when I run. You got to go do it. That's my
So you've been doing this in the legacy to the coach that changed your life? You're doing this in legacy of the coach who changed your life?
Yeah, so that's one of the stories. Now, if I was to,
that's
talk
amazing. But that's amazing. I mean, I think that's incredible, and that this person did. So here, let me do one. Let me do. I'll do a little tiny bit of coaching on messaging of that story, which
please
I
do.
love.
Yeah, please do.
Very such a good story. Here's the story. Here's the thing for when we tell our. It's a different. There's like people think of origin story. I don't do origin stories. I always make them into epiphany stories because people want to know the after, because then they want to know to follow you to the before. So because again, remember how we talked about in the beginning, I'm always seeking comfort and safety. I need to know, I am a human who doesn't want to watch a movie that's going to leave me feeling like crap at the end of the movie. There are certain people who love that moment. I want to get to the other side of like the joy at the end of and most people do. That's why those movies are more popular. People want to follow along on a journey and they want to know what the after is that you got there. So that story is so good. But I would get to the point of, and then when he fell on the field, I said that this man came into my life and changed my life. And now it's my turn to change other people's lives because he did for me. So since that point, I've been sharing his story. It's taking me to this space. It's helped me impact these people. It's helped me do this thing. So you have to give them that after thing. And I would say, and you can do it too. Whatever reason you have to feel called to tell your story, now is your time to take the stage. So you
Yeah.
just want to loop it to what happened for you and the
Right.
legacy, the difference you made because of that calling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and actually a lot of times when I do speak, and this is primarily to coaches that may be taking the job for granted, or maybe doing like teachers, educators, and business owners that may be doing it from a place where they don't realize that being a leader is something that they take for granted. But the folks working underneath you, just like Coach R was, you have no idea how much you can change their lives if you care. And you can't take this shit for granted, guys. You can't, especially if you have the opportunity to lead young men just like you're doing. And that's why I'm so appreciative of the work you guys are doing, because you guys made your money. You made enough to retire, get a house, and pack it in, but you made an effort to go back and help people that want to tell their story and give it a voice. And you make sure, just like you're doing to me right now, teaching just a little thing. Even again, I didn't necessarily pay you for that. If you want to send me an invoice or whatever, but it's so important that you guys are giving from that heartfelt place. So all that being said, well, I know we can start talking a lot. Justin, did you have anything you want to add to that? No.
No, I think it's absolutely beautiful. And, from the performance standpoint, if I could give you just one little tip, I really love the way that you were delivering that. You have just your own cadence, your own style.
Mhm.
There is something to be said for silence. What I mean by that is, hey, I'm on the field. I just love you have energy and the drive, and that's that power, that coaching. The train is moving, and once the train gets going, I know I can feel it. You're like, bah, 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 going, yes, it's that, and that is very much in alignment with your audience. The power, the energy that your right fit client and your people, the young men that you coach, and the young folks that you coach, like that makes sense, right? But when we get to a place where we want to really impact the audience, there are times when silence is great. And so I was there on the field, and we were in the fourth quarter, and we were winning. We were about to go to the championship. Everything that I had ever wanted was about to come true. Everything I'd ever wanted in my sports, however you want to put that, was about to come true. And Coach Art came up to me, and he was clapping his hands. And like what you were doing with your hands, like gives us such a great visual for that. He was clapping his hands, and he was giving us the pep talk that you see in the movies. It was amazing. It felt so good. We were all fired up. And I went out to the field. Now I'm kind of making things up, and I went out to the field, and we lined up, and all of a sudden, right before we were about to call the next play, I heard somebody scream over on the sidelines. I looked over, and I saw Art was on his back, looking up at the sky, struggling to breathe. He was having a massive heart attack there in front of his family, in front of the teammates, in front of the audience. That same man who had all the power in the world and was giving us the power and the passion didn't even have the power to be able to breathe. And there on that day on the field in front of me and everyone else who watched, he died. I was 9 years old, and I watched my coach, that man who would inspire me, die before my very eyes. But you know what? I didn't let that stop me. I didn't let that put me in a hole for whatever. I mean, I could go on forever. But you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Do you see the power of that? And what do I mean by silence? In that silence, you allow it to sit.
Yeah.
And you allow the audience, when we talk about, remember, seeing themselves in your story, because it's a story about you. It's a story about you, but what do we want? We always want to be thinking, what's in it for them? What's in it for them? What's in it for them in our sales and our marketing? What are stories? What's in it for them, the person who's listening? And when you just take a little bit of silence, you allow them to think about a loved one they've lost. You allow them to think about that moment of tragedy. And if nothing else, you allow them to sit in the experience of your experience. Which then makes it all the more powerful when, like Kim was talking about, you bring them through it and you show them, hey, but I didn't allow this to put me in a hole or in depression or wherever else, like so many other people have fallen into. And I don't fault them for that, but I tell you, I got a better way. And I use that pain as inspiration. I use that fear as fuel, and we can go on forever, right? And then you bring them out of it, and then all of a sudden, that is a story that, like, is so powerful just by itself, but utilizing little moments of silence
Mhm.
and that pacing that you have, but then shoop, pulling the brakes on it. Woo! I'm telling you, it's beautiful.
Well, I gotta say too, because you just put me back there, and I'm feeling like I'm there. So I gotta thank you all, because
Mhm.
this stuff is so important. And when you're from the outside looking in, and you're a great seller like yourself, people can look at you and say, "Oh, that person's shady. That person's tattoo." We get a bad rap as people that sell, but the trueness and what it takes for us to actually do it every day, how much of ourselves we have to give every day, it's not fake at all. It's something that we do because we're living it every single moment of our life, and we live these moments just like the poem. I mean, even when you told the story about your engagement ring, I mean, you're a young girl and you're throwing your engagement ring in the water or to feed your daughter. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about how that resonates with so many people, especially out here actually in West Palm Beach and where I teach. So, you know, the pretty much the next thing I have for you guys though is, can you just talk a little bit about what's the future for you guys? What does Elite Speakers Network? What is the vision, the overall plan? Just tell people a little bit about what's next. And
I want to actually I want to put the
but
brakes on one thing really quick because you mentioned something that I don't want to gloss over, especially for people listening who feel this all the time. Kim has a really great mindset shift when it comes to that feeling that we get of salesiness, being salesy, what a bad rap selling has gotten, because selling is one of the greatest things you could possibly do. There is nothing, and I'll just say what I have to say really quickly beforehand, and then Kim will drop the true diamond. But like, selling is the greatest thing that could have ever happened to us, because you and I would not be able to have this conversation, the three of us, if somebody hadn't sold an internet connection to somebody else, if somebody hadn't sold bits and pieces of a microphone to somebody else, if somebody hadn't sold the land rights to somebody else who had the equipment that got sold to them, that dug the silica out of the earth, that then sold it to somebody else who manufactured it and made the chips that are in all the things that so sales is like the greatest thing that could possibly happen. But there's this bad rap that sales get, and it's because of the difference of between persuasion and manipulation. So I'll turn it over to Kim.
Yeah, that's always a fine line to walk.
Right.
It's intent. The difference between persuasion and manipulation is intent.
Mhm.
If you have something that can serve and change the world, and you're not willing to make an offer, then you're making that again about you. You're worried about rejection and fear more so than serving people. Because if you had a life-saving drug and someone was dying in front of you, you would give it to them. Well, why are you keeping a solution that could change their life?
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
And when you talk about where do we want to go, this is where I get very emotional, in that I was put on this earth to empower humans to tell their story in a way to impact the world, because I know each of us went through something, not so our mess could become our message. It was so our mess could become other people's miracles. And I had the gift from God to meet Justin, that I was on this pathway just so that we could connect, just
Mhm.
so that we could combine our superpowers of him performance and me messaging and marketing,
Mhm.
and that I would gladly take on the role. He calls me the Velvet Hammer. I would be the no BS coach and give people the hard things that they don't always want to hear. And he would come in with charisma and commanding the stage performance that they needed, and we would change people's lives. And we get to do this every single freaking day. And so my goal and desire is to do what we're doing until my last breath. I don't have any desire to stop. I want to reach every human that I can. My goal is to be able to reach 1 million people annually. I already can 3 as social media, but I want 1 million people in our coaching annually, because there are billions of people who need to tell their story. And the more we can empower people to do that in a way that impacts the world, this world will change forever. And I know that it is the speeches that have changed our history. It is that I have a dream. It is the Gettysburg Address. It is the moments that the Berlin Wall went down, the day the iPod got lifted. It is the speeches that have changed everything. And if we can empower the next Malala to tell her story, the next thought leader who's waiting to tell his story, we can change the world. And so Justin and I are on a mission every single day to help as many people as possible do it.
Mhm. And what's the best way for people to reach out or get in touch with you?
You're going to go to, we have a weekly free workshop. Justin and I coach people for free every single week on our mission to serve the world. And we'd love you to join us. You're going to go to speakandgrowworkshop.com/podcast. That's speakandgrowrichworkshop.com/podcast.
Okay. And the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I need you both to use your imagination a little bit. I want you guys to go back actually, because actually, yeah, we'll do it like this. Go back to the day before you met. If you can remember the day before you met, I believe you were working this clubhouse thing and you, I believe, were, you were.
It was the pandemic, Efron. I don't want to go back there.
Right.
Don't make me go back.
Metaphorically, put yourself in that version of yourself.
Okay.
Pretend that version of yourself has come into the Zoom room. You're basically feeling hopeless. You don't know what you're going to do next. And then, pretend that version of you is here in the Zoom room. Give them some words of encouragement, and we will officially close with that.
Do you want to go first or second, Justin?
Oh, I'll go first. That's fine. Wow. The difference between that man and the man who's sitting in front of you today, I mean, there's the gulf of time, there's the gulf of experience, but ultimately the thing that I would go back and say to that guy is what I always say to every version of myself. It's like, just keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Like it is, I would go, I don't want to change that person.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. There are things that I would maybe do differently if I had the opportunity to do it over again, I guess. But like ultimately, when I really get down to it and I think about it, the choices that I made, the actions that I took, the actions that I didn't take brought me right here. To be with you, to be with Kim. Like I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be, I don't know, if I had made the right money choices when I was younger, if I'd made the wrong money choice, if I just whatever, like there's so many things that you can relitigate, but ultimately all of the problems and the challenges and the highs and the lows and the pits and the peaks and all that have forged me into who I am right now. And I wouldn't want to change any of that, because I feel like I'm just getting started in this facet of my life, and whether it was on American Idol or then Broadway or then film and television or then hosting on. I've lived so many lifetimes in this business, and now I'm really unlocking the stages for business owners and people who want to speak it like that. I wouldn't change it at all. So a long-winded way to say, you know what? I'd say just keep swimming.
That's it. That's it. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
After I would tell myself to buy lots of Bitcoin and Zoom stock, because I would. I would say that. And then
good idea.
Yeah, good idea. Then I would tell myself, you are doing a really awesome job surviving, but you were created to thrive. And there is joy waiting for you on the other side of some really hard decisions. The faster you step into them, the quicker you get to live the life that you were created to live. And I am grateful I had that epiphany a few years later, but I would give myself the gift of having it earlier and stepping into that life before I had.
And that's it. As I promised you, listeners, as I tell you every single day, there's a brand new episode that comes out every single day. We are here to indirectly help you through your challenges, through your obstacles, whatever you may be going through. You are not going through it alone. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.